Welcome to Order Militaris Radio TV, and today is our weekly program on terrorism around the world. And major breaking news happened over the weekend about who is responsible about the blast in Beirut. So that will be our leading topic. And we welcome Brother Alexis Bonello to the show.
Thank you, A, for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be on Order Militaris Radio TV, but especially for our weekly program on terrorism, because the mainstream media isn't really bringing this to the knowledge of anyone. And it's because they don't want Christians to start acting like Christians and react. And this is what we need to do. So this is why listening to this program every week and doing this program every week is very important for all of us to defend our brothers and sisters in Christ and to act as true Christians.
This is from the Twitter account that monitors all the Hezbollah terrorism. Hezbollah Watch. Beirut blast. It wasn't Russian national Greg Gushkin who owned the Rosolis, the vessel that delivered the 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate at Beirut port, but rather a separate businessman, Shalom Manoli, who maintained a relationship with a bank used by Hezbollah in Lebanon. Got it from Der Spiegel. And then there's a whole actual report. Okay. Since the devastating explosion of a store of ammonium nitrate in Beirut's port on August 4th, Lebanese citizens have taken to the streets in shock, outrage, and grief. Above all, they have demanded answers. Where did the nearly 3,000 tons of explosive chemicals come from? And who owned it? And why did the rickety ship that brought the hazardous materials to Lebanon end up stranded in the city's port in late 2013? And how could the impounded chemicals sit for over half a decade in an unsafe warehouse before tragedy finally struck? In Lebanon itself, the causes of the disaster appear to be tied to bureaucratic ineptitude. Just 2 weeks before the warehouse exploded, Lebanon's president received an urgent report from the country's security services, warning him that the situation was critically dangerous. The international side of the affair, on the other hand, quickly became lost in the maze of corporate and financial intrigue. Igor Grushkin, the Russian man variously described as the owner or the operator of the Moldovan flag MV Rosas, said to have abandoned the vessel in Lebanon after declaring bankruptcy. The vessel's deadly cargo had been purchased from the country of Georgia by a Mozambican firm that produces commercial explosives via a British middleman trading firm linked to Ukraine. The ownership of the Rosas and the companies that ordered nearly 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate to be transported halfway around the world in a rickety ship are obscured by layers of secrecy. As STEMI journalists and officials at every turn, even the Lebanese government does not appear to know who actually owned the ship. But an international team of investigative journalists have uncovered new facts about the lead up to the explosion, which killed at least 182 people and injured over 6,000 and caused hundreds of thousands to lose their homes. Reporters found that the circumstances for the tragedy were set in the baffling nowhere world of offshore trade, where secretive companies and compliant governments allow questionable actors to work in the shadows. Among those secretly connected to the Rosas and its long voyage, A hidden shipping tycoon, a notorious bank, and a businesses in East Africa previously investigated for ties to illicit arms trade. So this is what they found. Igor Greshkushkin did not own the Rosas, but was merely leasing it through an offshore company registered in the Marshall Islands. Instead, documents show that the true owner of the Rosas was Charles Manoli, a Cypriot shipping magnate. Manoli denies this but declined to provide documents to back up his claim. Manoli owned the ship through a company registered in the notoriously secretive jurisdiction of Panama, which received its mail in Bulgaria, registered it in Moldova, a landlocked Eastern European country that is notorious as a jurisdiction with lax regulations for vessels that fly its flag at convenience. To do this, he worked through another of his companies, GeoShip, one of a handful of officially recognized firms that set foreign owners up with Moldovan flags. Yet another Manoli company, this one based in Georgia, certified the ship as seaworthy, even though it was in such bad shape it was impounded in Spain days later. At the time of the Rosas' last voyage, Manoli was in debt to FBME, a Lebanese-owned bank that lost multiple licenses for alleged money laundering offenses, including helping the Shia militant group Hezbollah and a company linked to Syria's weapons of mass destruction program. At one stage, the Rosas was offered up as collateral to the bank. The ultimate customer for the ammonium nitrate on the ship, a Mozambican explosives factory, is part of a network of companies previously investigated for weapons trafficking, alleging supplying explosives used by terrorists. The factory never tried to claim the abandoned material. The intermediary for the shipment, a British company that was dormant at the time, convinced a Lebanese judge in 2015 to get the ammonium nitrate tested for quality, with the intent of claiming it. The stockpile was found to be in poor condition, and the company, Savaro Limited, did not try to take back the ammonium nitrate in the end. News revelations show how, at almost every stage, the Rosa Steadily shipment was connected to actors who used opaque offshore structures and lacked government oversight to work in the shadows. The revelations also exposed the particular dangers posed by the lack of transparency in the maritime shipping industry, according to Helen Simpson, director of the Cardiff University Seafarers International Research Center. The findings highlight all the weaknesses of the maritime shipping system. Now they can be exploited by those who wanted to exploit them, Sampson said.
What a really, so you say in Italian, pistachio. What a real mess of legal affairs. The Marshall Islands, if you don't know, is north of the Philippines. It's over there. And Moldova, if you don't know, is between Romania and the Ukraine. It's it almost touches the Black Sea, but it's a landlocked country. It really looks like what it really looks like, and this is not my opinion. I've seen it on social media from authoritative sources out of the Mideast, is that Iran wanted to get a huge pile of ammonium nitrate into the harbor of Beirut so that Hezbollah could use it to prepare bombs and their military and terrorist activities in southern Lebanon and perhaps even Syria. Because Iran could not ship it to Syria directly, it would be intercepted on the high seas as a shipment. So it was all this cover to make it end up there in the hands of Hezbollah. An extremely ornate legal maneuver using countless other entities and using the debt of someone owned to a bank. And oof, it really sounds like mafia, you know. If I guess you could say Hezbollah has a must have some like really mafia experts on finance. That's all I can say. They must be a real big expert in finance and maritime law to get to arrange it if it was arranged. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it is, if it was arranged. But none of this yet explains why it would have exploded and why Hezbollah would be so imprudent to store explosives near that stockpile.
Uh-huh.
Now, of course, it could be that the people making the decisions didn't know chemistry, and so they figured, it's ammonium nitrate's not explosive, so they thought, and that's possible because the knowledge of chemistry isn't uniform around the world. But
Yeah. This report goes on for several more pages. I mean, they connect dots.
yeah, how about any interesting things you can cherry pick off it?
Yeah, let's see here. The Rosa's true ownership. Let's see here. The Moldova flagship that set out from the Georgian port of Batumi in September 2013, carrying the ammonium nitrate made by a local factory and bound for it was made in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
There's where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
It was bound for Mozambique. Was in poor shape. The decks were corroded. It lacked auxiliary power and had problems with radio communication. The vessel stopped in Beirut to pick up more cargo and never left. It was detained first by the creditors seeking debts from its operator, and later by port officials who considered it unsafe to sail.
So who would put such a cargo on such a ship unless they never intended to reach the destination?
Mm-hmm.
And then the creditors come in. Who are these creditors? Do they say? Is it the Lebanese bank?
Let's see here. Mm-hmm. Uh, uh, doesn't say, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing it's one of those from Panama, from Bulgaria, from uh, however you want to connect the dots. However, they
Yeah.
were in Beirut.
Their lawyers were just waiting, or maybe they had been warned. If it was planned, it's really a masterpiece of legal. You know, um, you really have to be an expert in maritime law and international law to cook this thing up and orchestrate it. And do they have anything else on all the maneuvers were going on that allowed this cargo to stay in harbor? And whatever happened to the ship? Did the ship sink? Is the ship still there?
Uh, yeah. After the ship was abandoned and impounded in 2014, leaving Ukrainian and Russian crew members stranded on board for 10 months. The ammonium nitrate was moved to a warehouse at the port. The ship eventually sank behind a breakwater, where its wreckage remains.
And they never cleaned it up after all these years. It just
Mm.
left it in the harbor.
Following the Beirut explosion, media reports and government authorities have focused on one man as responsible for abandoning the ship and its cargo, Igor Grushkin, a 43-year-old Russian citizen living in Cyprus. Gregushkin has been repeatedly identified as the Rosa's owner. He has avoided all attempts by the OCCRP and other outlets to speak to him, although he was interviewed by the Cypriot police at the request of Lebanese authorities on August 6th. Yeah.
And that article you're reading from is what, Der Spiegel?
No, the OCCRP report.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I hear legal complaints in Beirut were being sent to the wrong court and almost like deliberately to prevent anything from happening on this.
Yeah. If you have the information, speak about it, because it's not in here.
No, I just saw it reported on social media that there's a certain court that had the jurisdiction over the disputed cargo, and the complaints were consistently sent by the government to the wrong court, which the government shouldn't have made. So it seems almost intentional. And
Yeah.
on top of this is that, remember that Hezbollah is controlling the port because they're in a political alliance in government with the leading Maronite party that chose to ally with them against the Sunni in the country because the Sunni they've always considered their rivals. So this explains why nothing was done. We still don't know how that fire started. That's the real thing, you know.
Yeah.
I can't for the life of me think that anyone in Hezbollah would have, smoked a cigarette and thrown it on the munitions dump. People aren't that stupid, but what you can't exclude anything. I mean, the Russians are the ones that turned off all their safety controls at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and made it go nuclear in like 1/26,000th of a second. So anything is possible, I suppose.
So it was the creditors from the FBME, the bank that went out of business.
Okay, so they're the ones who claim the cargo. See, it does kind of look like they were involved because if they had a debt on the ship, they could easily be influenced to claim it.
$4 million loan
Mm.
on a ship that was about ready to sink.
Yeah, so they defrauded the bank, the depositors on the bank too.
Yeah. Internal FBME records obtained by this watchdog group, and investigative group too, OCCRP, shows that over 962,000 US dollars of Sea Force's debt was still unpaid as October 5th, 2014, meaning the debt was still current when the Rosas made its journey.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and they certainly aren't going to be paid 900,000 to do that shipment. So,
yeah,
they probably, I mean, just to, for all probability's sake, since the cargo is very explosive, probably most companies didn't want it on their ship, let alone to ship it to the company Mozambique, which is known for supplying terrorists, the legal consequences.
yeah,
But all this has to do with terrorism because the explosives, ammonium nitrates, can be used to make IEDs and things of that sort.
mm-hmm.
But it still doesn't explain how on earth that fire started. I haven't seen any reports detailed here in the West yet on the actual events of August 4th. They say the fireworks cut off, but exactly at what hour did the fire take place? When were the firemen called in? What happened first? That pyrotechnic kind of analysis I haven't seen yet, and I'm surprised because we're already out 21 days. We should have had someone report on it. I'm surprised no journalists out of Beirut have reported on it. Or maybe they have in Arabic, but in English it hasn't been translated yet. That's something that needs to be done because certainly there was enough videos going on. Someone could have sit down and analyzed them and figured out just what went on step by step.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting. They have a map of the actual travel of the ship. It departed Georgia, the country of Georgia, on September 27, 2013. Went through the Turkish waters, over to Athens, arrived about October 21st, 2013, and departed Athens at November 16th, 2013. It arrived 4 days later in Beirut.
It took them a long time to go from Georgia to Athens. It's not a month's sailing. It's only a few days. What were they doing all that time? Doesn't make any sense.
They spent about they arrived in Tunza, Turkey at on October 3rd, 2013. Left 13 days later.
Sounds like they were having problems. Yeah. And all this happened 6 months after Benedict was driven from office, or at least welcome to go.
Yeah.
Because Pope Benedict, if I remember correctly, in 2012, or maybe it was 2010, but I think it was 2012, he went to Lebanon and he called on all the Christians and the people of Lebanon not to get involved in arms deals, arms sales, and the proliferation of destructive weaponry for the sake of peace in the region. So this was like a direct violation of what the Vicar of Christ had told them to do.
Yeah. Here we go. First, the Lebanese Customs Department asked the country's army to take it, but they refused, instead suggesting that it be offered to the local manufacturer, Lebanese Explosive Company, owned by the businessman Majad Shamas. There is no record of the company accepting the offer. The army then suggested simply sending the ammonium nitrate back to Georgia at the expense of the importer. This too never happened for reasons that remain unclear. By February 2018, Lebanese authorities appeared to have given up on their efforts to offload the ammonium nitrate, but the stockpile remained in an unsecured warehouse, an explosion waiting to happen. In a July 2020 report to the President and Prime Minister, just 2 weeks prior to the explosion, Lebanese security services warned that there was a serious security flaw at the facility that left ammonium nitrate open to theft. One door of the unguarded warehouse was missing, while there was also a hole in the southern wall. The report said, in case of theft, the thief could turn these goods into explosives, the report warned. According to 3 European intelligence sources investigating the blast, who spoke to the reporters on this condition of anonymity, the amount still stored in the warehouse by August may have been smaller than the initial 2,750 tons. They said the size of the explosion was equivalent to as little as 700 to 1,000 tons of ammonium nitrate, but the blast was big enough to destroy large parts of eastern Beirut. It was one of the strongest non-nuclear explosions ever recorded.
So this means because the question, what they're talking about, several points arise from this. If a report was given to the president on the 20th of July, just 2 weeks before the explosion, that leads me to conjecture that there is a high probability that someone got a copy of that report and used the information to detonate it. Okay. They now knew how to get there and how to get in. So that means any foreign intelligence agencies with spies in the Lebanese government, okay, who wanted that gone. And the second thing it brings to mind is that if that much was stolen, then this might be the ammonium nitrate supply that was used to create many of the terrorist weapons in the Syrian civil war. And in other parts of the Mideast in the last 6 years. Because that's like, they're saying 2,000 tons was stolen, okay? That's a lot of IEDs, okay? That's a lot of car bombs. So those are the three things that, and then how can the Army suggest the ammonium nitrate be given to a company that doesn't exist? Okay,
Yeah.
so that raises questions about high-level corruption in the Lebanese military itself. I won't comment on anything else because it may not be safe to my personal safety to speculate on it. But I can see how Lebanese are just be absolutely furious now that all these details are coming out.
Yeah.
But I want to praise those 200 journalists who got together and investigated this worldwide. That's an act of real journalism, and you don't really see much these days. And they all deserve to be praised, although they might have done it anonymously, because a massive research effort that's probably did something that even the intelligence agencies didn't know about it.
Yeah.
But then as an American citizen, I'm going to say, why did the U.S. intelligence agencies not know about this, and why didn't they take any action? Because the U.S. government has put something like 16 or 20 organizations and individuals, maybe even more than that, in Lebanon under sanctions for the support of the Syrian government and terrorist activities. No mention of this nitrate supplier on that list at all. Why didn't they put on pressure?
Mm-hmm.
If the U.S. is opposed to terrorism, why didn't they just send a war fleet in there and take the substance and take it out of there? Why let it sit there and be used to kill innocents?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions on this, a lot of questions, and the it would be interesting to see some chemist report whether if you drop a match on ammonium nitrate, it's going to catch fire. I don't think it's that kind of a substance, but who's to say? I'm not a chemist.
Yeah. All right. And we go from around, we go from our trip around the world back to America. And we have BLM Antifa militants going around the neighborhood in Portland, threatening to murder Portland citizens. And the police aren't doing anything to stop it. You there?
Yeah, I'm there. I mean, what can I say? It's stunning. If they start killing people and they do nothing about it, then BLM will have done the American ISIS. And I remember in 2016, we warned people. We said, look, the fact that it's come out that Obama was behind creating ISIS, funding ISIS, and arming ISIS means that the left has decided to use terrorism as a political instrument. And that means it's very dangerous now that the left in the US could start creating terrorist organizations. And when 2018 came by with Charlottesville, we warned people that Black Lives Matter and Antifa could quickly morph into ISIS.
Oh.
No one listened to us.
No. Then we go up to New York to the UN building. And Gatestone Institute report. UN supports world worst state sponsor of terrorism, Iran. This was from, let's see, 3 days ago. One would think that one of the most dangerous things possible would be to allow what the U.S. State Department calls the world state sponsor of terrorism, Iran, freely to buy, sell, and export advanced weapons. Yet this is exactly what the United Nations has decided to do. The UN Security Council voted on August 14th to permit the 13-year arms embargo on the Iranian regime to expire. Even the ruling mullahs do not seem to believe that they received such a great reward. I don't remember in the past the U.S. preparing a resolution for months to strike a blow at the Islamic Republic of Iran, and it garners only one vote, the Dominican Republic, said Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. This, he added, was a humiliation and a blow to U.S. Iranian politics. The media outlets are also celebrating. As the headline of the Iranian newspaper Eternidad read in Persian, U.S. is defeated in home game. Attempts in New York to conceive the UNSC member state fail. Iran, Iran, thanks to the previous U.S. administration, is crying victory. Among the many concessions the Obama-Biden administration gave the ruling mullahs of Iran was setting a date when Iran's arms embargo would be lifted. President Obama agreed to add a provision in the nuclear deal, which, by the way, Iran never signed, for the arms embargo's disappearance.
So they get it even though they don't sign for it. What a deal that is. And you notice how the Obama-Biden administration set a deadline that would expire before the next election.
Mm-hmm.
Dump it on someone else.
Yeah.
But Obama was a promoter of terrorism worldwide because he was a terrorist. And his politics is all terrorism, so is the left. So, but when are Americans going to wake up that the reason why this embargo is not voted to be sustained by the other nations is they're all eager to sell weapons to Iran, you know. And this is one of the problems with the modern arms industry is they have a lot of money and influence politicians to sell weapons, but you know, human nature being what it is, the more weapons out there, the more chances that the ones who want to use them unjustly against innocents will use them.
Yep.
Iran doesn't really have any need to have weapons. It's not at war with anyone, and no one is really able to go to war with Iran. Has such a large army. No one could go, of its neighbors could go to war with it. So, what do they need weapons for?
Yeah. Well, then we go up north to Canada. Again, Gatestone Institute. And 4 days ago, Canada's Conservatives welcome extremists and reject reformers. Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper and current Conservative leadership candidate Peter MacKay co-founded the Modern Conservative Party of Canada, based on the promotion of freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Canada's right wing, however, has recently been consorting with Islamists patiently opposed to these fundamental ideas. Across the Western world, extremist Muslims have long partnered with the left, perhaps out of the shared partiality for identity politics, or at the very least because progressive movements can easily be exploited to advance radical causes. Now, however, even the conservative establishment is courting Islamist activists and politicians. At the federal level, frontrunners in the CPC leadership race, Peter MacKay and Aaron O'Toole, have each welcomed prominent extremist activists into their campaigns. In January of this year, O'Toole appointed Waleed Solomon as his campaign chair. Throughout his professional career, Solomon has supported applying the Sharia banking system in Canada. In an interview with Globe and Mail, Solomon dismissed concerns that a Sharia-compliant economy would violate Canada's secular system. This is simply about market demand and interest, he said. He may, of course, support more than that. One LGBT group has criticized O'Toole for welcoming an advocate of Sharia into his campaign. Why, they asked, is Solomon unable to publicly reject Sharia law despite repeated attempts for clarification? Does he believe in Sharia application to the LGBTQ people? Noto replied, "I will always oppose any threat to those principles of freedom, democracy, and rule of law, here and at home, including Sharia law. Any suggestions otherwise is preposterous, tinfoil hat thinking. The fact that I even have to say this is profoundly sad."
Which means it's totally true. They love their, I do evil, but don't you dare say it. I did evil kind of liberal politicking.
Yeah.
It's really shameful. Canada is becoming increasingly a national security threat to the United States. If we didn't have many already domestically, um, um, maybe this will encourage the Western provinces to secede, as there's been talk of that. But is there any talk of the Conservatives taking in devout Roman Catholic monarchists into their party that want a restoration of the monarchy? No. No. So why is it that the Conservatives always are embracing the left and always rejecting Catholics and devout Christians?
They don't want a Christian country, but they'll welcome anything under the sun that's not Christian.
Because they're Masons, they're Freemasons.
It'd be like, and people might be asking, what does Masons and Islam have to do together? Well, if you look at how the higher up Masons wear Islamic hats and stuff and do Islamic religious things in their temple.
Yeah, it's not just that. The third most powerful Masonic lodge in the world is at Istanbul and includes all Muslims. So it's because of the Masonic lodge in Istanbul that the modern state of Turkey exists, because the Masonic powers were going to divide it up when it was under the Sultan, the Caliph. And once he was deposed by Ottoman the Turk, the Freemason, then all the allies backed out and let Turkey remain and oppress Christians and never pay its debts for murdering millions of more than 1 million Christians in the Armenian genocide. Because for Masons, you can commit any crime, there's never retribution. You could kill 1 million Armenians, no retribution. You could starve to death 20 million Ukrainians, no retribution. You could kill 60 million Chinese, no retribution. You could kill 40 million Cambodians or 20 million, no retribution, because you're Masonic or you're Masonic ally and you can get away with anything. But if one Christian dare burn down a Masonic lodge, oh, you have a war against them. You dare resist the Masonic government of Mexico, 25,000 of you have to be shot.
Yep.
For having surrendered. After you surrender to us, you get shot, even when you're supposed to have been declared innocent. So that's the history of the 19th century. It's completely Masonic. We need to open our eyes to it, and that's why this kind of thing's going on. If you're a Christian voting for the Conservative Party in Canada, it's a wasted vote, because you're voting for the people who have enslaved you, the Freemasons.
Yeah.
We're just pretending to resist the left, but not much.
And we head to Africa to what we hear from the head of the village who describes the Fulani attack in Nigeria. This was from one day ago. Bala Zogfa, head of Gongor village in Zingan, Katif of Kaduna State, was recently interviewed by The Punch, a Nigerian newspaper. In the interview, Bala describes how his village was attacked yet again on July 20th and August 5th of this year. He related how Fulani in the village had been warned of the impending attacks beforehand and were able to leave the area. The rest of the villagers had heard rumors and did not have enough time to leave. During these attacks, at least 12 people were killed. Allah says that he knows that these attacks were conducted by Fulani militants because the Fulani who lived in the community were warned beforehand. He says that his village has never once attacked any Fulani, has even lived in peace with the Fulani people in his village for years. He has no idea why they were targeted and so much of their village was killed and property destroyed. He also said that they have tried to have talks with the Fulani leaders since the attack started, but none have been successful. Bala and his people are now living as refugees in their own country. These attacks are all too common in the middle belt of Nigeria. Tens of thousands of people are living in the same way as Bala in his village. Most of these are Christians who have suffered for their faith.
Terrible. The Fulani tribe has been involved in jihad, that is the persecution of their neighbors in the name of Islam, for almost 200 years now. So it's not something new for the Fulani. They have practiced ethnocide, killing other tribes, and religious persecution of their neighbors a long time. And nothing is evidently being done about it. They say the government laments it, but there's been no real measures to weed out the Fulani radicals and do something. And if the Fulani leaders aren't even listening to Christian villages, then they're benefiting by it. The Fulani are herdsmen, so they like taking land from farmers and turning it into pasture land, mostly because Africa is drying out and their normal grazing land to the north has all turned to wasteland. Something needs to be done, and hopefully with the next 40 years, we're going to be getting global cooling. They'll get more rain in the Fulani lands and they'll have less need to persecute their neighbors, but still, something needs to be done in the Kaduna state.
Yeah.
And I wrote the Bishop of Kaduna, the Catholic bishop, never wrote me back, suggesting that we organize the defense of Christians in his province. This is why our organization is not tied to the hierarchy, because in most places the hierarchy are betraying you and have betrayed you. Not because they are the priests or bishops of Christ, because they are the men who are the priests and bishops of Christ are not the men God chose, and certainly are not faithful to him, or they would be advocating your defense.
Yeah. Now we go to France. The Church Saint Pierre in Saint Paul-sur-Saulx, Diocese de Toulouse, was vandalized. That's all it says.
Then there was another report of the vandalism of tombstones, wasn't it, in the graveyard in Haute-Pyrénées?
Yeah. Yeah, tombstones smashed, broken, destroyed. And
the Observatoire Christianophobe, I think that's how you pronounce it. They have a Twitter site and they have a website, and they've done a lot of reporting since 2014 all about this in France. What France needs to do is respond and start a company that investigates these and assists in catching people who do them, before your nation is totally have all its Christian cultures wiped out.
Yeah.
And I don't know who's behind that website, but we'd love to have them on the talk show and tell us more in detail what is going on in France and who's doing it, if they have a rep that can speak English.
Yeah. I sent him a direct message on Twitter, and so far nothing back, so.
Yeah, things in France are so bad they may be afraid of being persecuted themselves by the government for merely reporting the news.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is in France, because the Masonic government in France wants to destroy Christianity. They've been up to it for 200 years, and now they're importing Muslims as fast as they can to continue to finish it off.
Before we were going on video, we just mentioned about the attack in Philadelphia.
Yeah, there was a lector at Mass at the Church of St. Peter and Paul in Philadelphia that was attacked. by a black man, I believe it was, and it's not clear why it happened, what the motive was, and I believe it happened yesterday on Sunday.
Mhm.
I saw the report tweeted out by a Catholic priest. That's how I heard of it. Fortunately, it was only a light altercation, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so they won't share anything. Okay.
Mm.
On the internet, so.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we have, folks.
More than enough. And perhaps if there's one bright spot in the news this week, it was the new prime minister of Iraq wants Christians to come back to Iraq and says they're an essential part of the country, and hopefully he'll be taking steps to ensure their security and give them the chance to govern themselves, because if they can't govern themselves with their own military forces, they'll never be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hopefully he sees the light on that.
Yeah. Tomorrow is going to be a good show. Going to be on the life of King Richard the Lionheart.
And the Third Crusade.
Yep. Maybe wake up the English.
A great king, Richard the Lionheart. Not anything like these fake kings following Henry VIII, who are all not worth anything.
Yep.
England is another country where the Masonic, well, even the pre-Masonic, the Anglicans, the political hierarchy revolted against its own people and has imported foreigners to reign over them for 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few nations where the British are so proud of their nationality, but they're really subjugated by foreigners. They don't have English monarchs.
Mm-hmm.
And England was the first country where that in Western Europe that happened, and now through the left it's happened everywhere. We're governed by a foreign ideology wherever the left is ruling.
Yep. So, be using this big book.
What's the title?
Richard the First, from the Yale English Monarch series by John Gillingham.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of the definitive biographies. So we'll learn a lot about Richard the Lionheart,
mm-hmm.
and what really happened on the Third Crusade. And did he win or did he lose? And what great benefit Christians have had since his reign to this day, thanks to him. So he's the one English king that all Christians need to thank.
And you're going to correct the lies and myths about him, saying, oh, he was an anti-Semite.
They always charge Catholic monarchs of being anti-Semites. That's like the stock phrase, you know. You never hear of Jewish leaders accused of being racist, you know. If it is, they'll say, oh, a Palestinian is saying that, they'll say. You know.
Tune in tomorrow.
Now, before we go, AJ, there's a whole bunch of different things you can get at the Teespring store at Order Militaris Radio, aren't they? Can you tell us about them?
Yeah. Let's go up here. Let's see. Yeah, let's see here. You can get the Order Militaris Radio T-shirt with our logo on it. You can get the mug that you've seen on the show. You can get a die-cal sticker go on your car, boat, or whatever. And when it gets cooler or cold out, you can get yourself a Order Militaris Radio hoodie with the logo right here on the chest. You can also get the Lepanto t-shirt with the Lepanto flag on it. Now, there's a gray sweatshirt with the words on the front, the Holy League of 1571, and the Lepanto flag is on the back. And there is also another sweatshirt that is white, has the Holy League 1571 and the flag on the front. And also, you can also get a mug with the Lepanto flag on it.
Yeah, the mug's really cool.
All that is on the Order Militaris Radio store, which you can just click on the top menu bar where it says Order Militaris Radio store. It'll take you to all those items, and you can. And most of those things should be able to be bought in all across the world.
Okay. And that way you can help Order Militaris Radio TV with its expenses. It slowly grows. So I like your new headphones, AJ. It's a lot easier to hear you with them for the show, and hopefully it will give us better recording quality.
Yeah, we had to invest in some new speakers, so using the headphones with the microphone, and they sound better.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so thank you for having me on for this important program, and I look forward next week to our weekly show on terrorism, a terrorism review, and hopefully we have nothing to report. But sadly, that's not going to be the case, the way the world is.
Yeah. So please like and share this video on YouTube and BitChute, and please like and share this show on Mixcloud. And thank you all to those who subscribe to our channels and follow us on Mixcloud. And see you tomorrow when we talk about Richard the Lionheart. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.